How can we educate people in order to make people or everyone immune to the possibility of being abused by the use of their need for development? Abusive use. So how can people, is there any possibility to move the paradigm to the people instead of trying to cure the environment, to cure the people from being abused? Because it's exactly the principle. I was starting from the principle of the immune system. You also mentioned it in the beginning. The immune system is personal and is adapting to the environment, thus allowing the environment to develop, to have biodiversity, but biodiversity will be killing us if we wouldn't have immune system. So, can it be built, a spiritually immune system, or how to call it, immune system, which is spiritual immune system, yeah, that can allow the environment to be as free as possible, thus having diversity, spiritual diversity, without harming each other, not by making rules on the environment, but by creating immunity into people, so that people really can tolerate, because actually, in my opinion, tolerance is based on such paradigm of spiritual immunity. Then you become tolerant, because otherwise, if somebody can hinder your path, of course it's very difficult to start to tolerate that, unless you understand that as a spiritual practice. For instance, when you are hindered by this. First of all, the history is showing repeated reaction to the simple scheme. And this is a scheme which is used everywhere today. In advertising, in the capitalist environment, in the communist environment was abusively used, and so on. The scheme was also presented, for instance, in Buddha chain of life and imprisonment. Need that leads to demand, that leads to, in our world today, offer, that leads to addiction, that leads to power exchange, that leads to accumulation of power, that leads to abuse. And that scheme that is starting from a need, and of course we can prolong the chain backward, desire, attachment, and all the other things, was addressed, was revealed by many spiritual systems. And of course they say, cut the limb that leads you to the temptation. Good, that's a radical approach. But history, statistics are showing this doesn't work for everyone. As a proof, no matter how we put it, in the end we have some people abusing other people. And of course, as a scientist, I was wondering always, if a system is giving always the same result, it must be a law inside there. It must be a system error, probably, if we consider this abuse of power as an error. Maybe it's a rule. Now, the argument that came 2 days ago was from my colleagues from Italy, where the people who are teaching yoga in our school there, they were taken by the police 2 days ago, accused of all kind of insane things, absolutely outrageous, and confiscated the goods, all the computers and everything, phones, treated as very dirty criminals. From a certain perspective, such a reaction that our school just freshly encountered, and is not the only thing that happened. A few years ago, this yoga center was attacked publicly in an extremely dirty way. A few years back, also another school in Romania, and the mentor of this school was suffering the same situation. Now he is enjoying the status of political asylum in Sweden, which is another member country of the same union as his native country, Romania. So all that we can see is a systemic error or systematic failure of the system to treat the problem of spiritual diversity. And this is what I have addressed in this very short presentation. Now, first observation is that the story is not new. Of course, we mention here Jesus many times. We have to mention also in regards of abuses. after all. He was assassinated by the system, not because they wanted to write the Bible, that was written after. That he was assassinated because he came with something that was threatening. And now what we can see, analyzing from a scientific perspective, the prisons and the persecution tend to move inside. Today, we don't have prisons outside, not because we are more democratic, it's because we moved the prison inside. Today, we don't have people manipulated with wires because it's the wireless technology, not because there are no wires to bound people. And all it starts for the need of people's ego for safetiness. And here it was addressed, in my opinion, tangentially, this need of safetiness. People want to make sure that the leadership, even spiritual leadership, is going on the path. And because of that, it's normal, the tendency of safetiness, when it's exaggerated, to start to make criteria to sanitize everything until practically you kill all the people. Therefore, it becomes in itself the reaction, the apparently legitimate reaction of the society, another misuse of power. We have, in the Middle Age, for instance, Inquisition. It was an institutionalized way to eliminate evil, which became the evil itself. Now, today we have the modern zealots. The modern zealots I call here the anti-sect organizations. The need of people which generate this reaction cannot be ignored if we want to evolve. And this is, when we say to evolve, we say to, first of all, learn something. Now we have today, in my opinion, a wrong paradigm of evolution. We try to find final solutions. We cannot have final solutions. We can have lessons from different situations, and by learning the lesson, we eliminate the need for that situation to occur. And we call it karma, we call it dharma, we call it in many ways. It doesn't matter. The mechanism is always the same. Eliminating the cause will eliminate the effect. So if we eliminate the need for a lesson, the lesson will never occur. Now, this is leading us to another interesting idea, the tolerance that was mentioned many times in the panels today. In ancient time, if we study the organization of the society, tolerance was kind of by default. They were people with strong emotions and mysteriously much more tolerant when it comes to extremely big variety of beliefs. Now, we came to the conclusion, analyzing these systems, that there is an intrinsic wisdom that was protecting the individual. An individual at that time was feeling protected because he was given the tools to protect himself. He was immune. He was having this immunity, spiritual immunity, thus being ready to listen to all the preachers, all the prophets. Now today, the intuitive ways based on principles are almost lost. And we have a lot of debate about intuition, even in the scientific world, giving power to the intuitive work. The reaction towards this loss of intuition is, I would say, maybe exaggeratedly, paranoia. We have a paranoia of anything today. We are afraid of terrorism. We are afraid of spiritual terrorism. We are afraid someone will hijack our belief to lead us to some sideways, and so on, so forth. And that comes because we cut part of our possibilities, especially the intuitive part, off. I think Martinus is right. It will take a time. I don't know, 500 years sounds a little scary, but it will take a time. And the debate today, I think, is a proof that it will take a time, because we are making small steps, and we are not a gigantic crowd here showing that for this message, which I find one of the most revigorating spiritual message that was issued today, to reach to many people, it will take a time. Exactly as a substance to penetrate, to create a reaction there, it takes a time. It's called reaction time. I lay down 7 principles that I found, principles that can constitute a platform that, inserted gradually into the society, in the basic education, will create immunity for people towards the spiritual environment. In this way, any movement which will, of course, develop, a movement cannot develop without people, developing within the society will be forced to somehow follow all the needs of people. So it's a draft. I just want to propose it here. First principle, the individual has to be given the chance to evolve. With other words, every time when we speak about spirituality, we should give exercises, principles, and rules that become effective tools in the hands of the individual. Not serving others, but me, the individual. That's a second principle. All the people, and here I want to underline, clerics, the people involved, should practice as well as the others. And I would even give a kind of adaptation to the saying, everyone is equal in front of the practice. As we say, everyone is equal in front of the law. I would say everyone is, first of all, equal in front of practice. And the scientific spirituality, for instance, that was mentioned practically by everyone today, is the spirit for applying this principle. A third principle will be validation of all realizations in the daily existence. That meets all the other requests, helping the others, practicing acts of good faith, compassion, all these things. It means validation in the daily existence of the highest spiritual states. That validation, it protects individuals from being fooled. Because they will validate themselves, they will validate their master, they will validate everyone. And that is a very healthy environment. Another principle, all teaching should become accessible to the individual in steps, in organic teaching, as we call it, but as method, not as statements. Another principle, the focus is upon evolution and transformation. When there is no evolution, there is no spirituality. It goes together with the validation. Transformation has to be part of any spiritual system. Now, there's another principle, the sixth one. The system itself is developing continuously towards covering all the life aspects with solutions. There is a tendency today, and I would say 99% of the misunderstandings about spirituality are coming from, on one hand, ignorance of people, but on the other hand, the fact that spiritual systems have been leaving out parts of life. And then reality comes and bring it about, exactly as the river washed the bones of the mammoths, and they're coming out, and suddenly where the world was created, where were the mammoths at the creation, and so on. So in exactly the same way, today, for instance, people are asking, well, we cannot just throw away everything we know just because it's not written in that book. Let's write another book, update the teaching, not the principles, of course, but the teachings should be adapted. And the seventh principle, the system should be based upon universal principles that are eternal. These 7 principles can, if laid down in the basic education, can, in my opinion, create a generation of people that are immune to any spiritual environment that becomes abusive. In this respect, I consider that the work of education, and I have to admit that I learned these principles from my teacher, and they are kind of somehow the texture of the teachings of this school. They represent somehow a solution, a long-term solution, long shot, so to speak, to solve this resistance that we have encountered, practically all of us here at a certain moment from the society, to solve it by not necessarily finally solve it, but simply learning the lesson from it. And this is what was the attempt, to synthesize all these lessons into basic principles to be taught, and then people understanding them in time, immersing into the society, to be transformed into an immunology of the immunity of the people on spiritual environment. Thank you.